Local history. Local culture. Local events. Your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Brad Velardi is our guest. Brad is involved with Greater Utica Magazine, and Greater Utica Magazine is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about stories that have been in recent issues, and we're going to be talking about upcoming things that Brad would like to do. But before we do that, we're going to say welcome. Good to see you.
Great to be here as always. Thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome. And one of the things we should tell people right off the bat, before I forget, which I sometimes do, is Greater Utica Magazine is a free publication. It's available around the area, banks and convenience stores and supermarkets and places like that, correct?
Absolutely. Every Hannaford location, from Herkimer to Rome, every Price Chopper location all throughout the area, in the Mohawk Valley. It's pretty much everywhere you can think of.
Now, I get mine at Adirondack Bank, but I haven't seen it lately. So it's either you haven't been going or you haven't been leaving enough there. I don't know which.
Yeah, well, we tend to run out pretty fast. In fact, since we actually have every Cliffs location, Cliffs local market. They've been a great supporter of ours for the past several months, and now we distribute at all 14 locations in the area. And since we brought them on as a distribution partner, needless to say, we've been running out of issues faster than ever.
And I see they've just, I don't know if it's open yet, but it's just about to open, the one in Washington Mills, so there'll be another stop for you.
Right, yeah.
The magazine will, it just came out this week for the new issue, once a month. How far ahead do you work if you do work it ahead?
Well, it varies from month to month. This particular issue and the January issue always pose a challenge for us because of the holiday. So we always have to get it done a few days earlier than usual. Typically somewhere between the 20th and the 23rd, we have to submit the file to our printer and hope that there's not a snowstorm that stops the 18-wheeler from bringing it to us. You know, there's a number of factors, but we're usually a couple weeks ahead of time.
Where do you get it printed?
It's a company out in Buffalo, and they've done a great job for us. We just recently, within the past year, started printing with them, and everything's been working out fine.
I'm looking at the October 2023 issue, and it's about the Comets.
Yes, sir.
You a hockey fan?
I am. I'm a local hockey fan. I don't pay much attention to the NHL, but I do. I mean, I just love the tradition of local professional hockey, and that's a lot of what that article is about, the emergence of the Comets, but also our hockey roots that go all the way back to the early 20th century.
Yeah, and I was just reading an article somewhere, and I forget where it was, or maybe it was a letter to the editor or something like that, but they were talking about local hockey and the success of the Utica Comets in the AHL. Their point was that getting overlooked sometimes is the role that the Utica college hockey team played here, because when we didn't have professional hockey, Utica college hockey kind of kept hockey alive.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, and Gary Heenan, the gentleman who founded the hockey program at Utica College, now Utica University, you know, he really got the whole thing jump-started. And when they started putting thousands of people back in the Utica Memorial Auditorium, I think that these NHL franchises started realizing that there was a potential market here, which I think we had proven several times in the past. But, you know, again, smaller communities get overlooked. A lot of the teams that they play in larger markets. And so it's very easy for an area like the Mohawk Valley to be overlooked, but thankfully we've had now 2 teams invest in this area in the past decade, so it's been great.
And I think one of the reasons, I mean, who am I to say some reasons for somebody's success, but we've had that hockey tradition going back to the Clinton Comets.
Sure.
And Rob Ash, who was in charge of the Utica Comets, has really paid homage to that tradition. I mean, there's even sculpture outside the auditorium.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's part of the reason why it's been so successful, is the embracing of the history of the tradition. Because of the point that I make in the story is that traditions are so essential to a community because it connects past generations to current generations. And it gives us all a common characteristic or a point of pride that we can all, take pride in together and enjoy together, rather than, dividing us on age lines or what have you. We all have this common thing that brings us together, and hockey has been one of those things for a long time.
In fact, if you go to some of the Comet games, you'll see in the stands Jack Kane,
Sure.
number 15 for the old Clinton Comets, and Bordy Smith, who I think was number 10 for the Comets, and Dave Armstrong, number 7 for the Comets. Some great players enjoying the game down there.
Absolutely.
Who's that?
That particular gentleman, I'm not
Yeah.
100% sure off the top of my head, but the Comets were really gracious in providing
They
us
provided
with a
the
lot
photo.
of great photographs. So.
The size of the auditorium, do you get into that in your article, the size of the auditorium? I think it's a perfect size for an AHL team because you can fill the place up.
Right, yeah, absolutely. What I get into specifically is not the size necessarily, but the atmosphere that has been created there. And I think maybe that what you're saying is kind of plays into that because you're able to fill the arena. And one thing that I learned from interviewing Ryan Schmelzer, who's the captain of the team, he previously played on the Devils' previous franchise, which I believe was in Binghamton, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
What he kind of clued me in on is that the Utica crowd in the auditorium is known all across the AHL for the raucous atmosphere, the dedication of the fans, the thousands of people that show up for every single game. And I thought that was really a testament to the spirit of fandom that we have in this area.
And if you're in a venue that seats, I forget what our seats, I don't know, 3,000-4,000. But if you're in a place that seats 10,000, you're looking at a place that's half empty. Versus, you could even have more people, but the place looks half empty. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can speak to that because I went to Notre Dame High School and we played in the Section 3 championship at the Carrier Dome. And everybody I know showed up for the game, and there was still not even enough to fill up the first row.
I know
of fans.
exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So.
And that leads me to a story about John Kennedy, who we're going to be talking about his visit to the area in a little bit.
Sure.
Brad Velardi is our guest. He's with Greater Utica Magazine. Short break. Right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Brad Velardi is our guest. Brad is with the Greater Utica Magazine. It goes through Utica, Rome, Oneida, Madison County, Herkimer County. Did I hit the area?
That's right.
We've been talking about comets. We're going to talk about John Kennedy's visit to our area back when he was running for president. But before we get to that, we've been speaking about Utica Comets. Rob Esch, he's also, Rob Esch, involved with another sport in Utica.
Yes, and that's actually something that we are covering in the December issue of the publication, Utica City FC, which I alluded to, hockey being an old tradition of the area. Utica City FC has now created a new tradition in the area with the indoor soccer team that is really, I think a lot of people who didn't expect to be fans of indoor soccer have now become avid supporters and even season ticket holders for this exciting team.
I've had other people tell me the same thing. They say, "Have you been down to a soccer game?" And I say, "No, I'm not a big soccer fan." And they'll say, "You got to go."
Yeah,
So,
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What do they do? They just do they leave the ice down? They must leave the ice down and then just cover it.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you, but that is one of the exciting things about the sport, is that it's confined to such a small area. You know, a soccer pitch is enormous, really, if you see it in person,
Yeah.
a professional one. And when you see the indoor soccer field in person, it's how these guys work within those confines, I don't know, but it must take an immense level of skill.
And speed, huh?
And speed, yeah.
Did you get a chance to talk to anybody on the team?
Sure, yep. I spoke with Nate Bordeaux, who was the captain of the team, and I spoke with Everton Morera, who was the coach of the team, who actually was just named, I'm not sure if you're familiar with futsal, but futsal is a form of soccer with a smaller ball, smaller pitch.
Okay.
It's big in Brazil, but it's big internationally, and he has now been named the Team USA head coach of the futsal team, which is a really big deal.
The season goes from, are we into the season now?
December 2nd is the first game, I
Okay,
believe.
all right.
And that goes all the way into April, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. The last year they did pretty well, didn't they? I mean, they
Sure.
showed a lot of fans.
Yeah, they sell out games pretty regularly. They made it to the playoffs, and they weren't really expected to. Last year, they were a year ahead of schedule, and they just traded for a gentleman named Frank Taillot, who has won MVP of the league multiple times. He's considered one of the greatest players in the history of indoor soccer, and they just landed him for this season. So a lot of exciting stuff going on.
It was also exciting when John Kennedy came to Oneida and Herkimer counties back when he was running for president. And you've got an article in the, this was the November
Correct.
issue of this year.
Well, yeah, November marked the 60th anniversary of his death. And so I felt as though it was originally this was only supposed to be maybe a story that took up 2 pages in the magazine, because we had a photo of the memorial service that they held at the Utica Memorial Auditorium following his assassination. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that there was such a strong connection with him that dated all the way back to his campaign in 1960. And a couple of things really struck me about this story. One of them, because I like to connect the national narrative to the local story, because I think it's important to do that. But a few of the things that struck me about this story was how divided our country was on partisan lines, even back in that time. It's just that people didn't have social media to so freely express their opinions and trade insults, quite frankly, with people. But also the respect that people had for a sitting president during that time. I often wonder if something were to happen to a president in the modern era, similar to what happened to him, if the nation would come together the same way that it had and pay that respect.
When he came in prior to the election night, when he came in campaigning here, whereabouts did he go?
He started in Ilion, and he worked his way up into Utica and then into Rome. And it was just pandemonium, particularly outside of the Utica Memorial Auditorium. There was thousands and thousands of people that gathered to see him, because an interesting thing about his visit to Utica is that it was only a few days prior that the very first televised debate in the history of the presidency took place between Kennedy and Richard Nixon. And today that's a very, very famous debate that a lot of people say that, you know, Kennedy kind of won the presidency through his confidence and you know, his composure, and Nixon was famously sweating under the lights on the broadcast. And he was here just a few days after that, and that may be the cause for why so many people showed up, because they actually got to see the charisma and all those things that people speak about today.
In fact, there's a picture with your story showing Nixon wiping his lip or his brow or something.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And he was riding, another picture shows him in a convertible riding through somewhere down the valley.
Sure. Yeah, it's down in Ilion, I believe. And that's the thing. It just goes all along with the whole, persona, riding in the white convertible. He was more of a celebrity, more of a rock star than a presidential candidate.
The story that I was reminded of when I saw him on the cover of your November issue was Jerry Bruno was one of his advance men. They'd come into a community before the candidate, and they would set everything up and all the advance work. And he would always make sure to put John Kennedy in a venue that they were sure they could fill. And Nixon's people sometime would put him in a venue, say, it would hold 10,000 people. Maybe they'd get 7,000 in there, but you got 3,000 empty seats. Kennedy's people would put him in a venue that held maybe 5,000.
Right.
So he had less people, but the image was of a packed house.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, the time he came into Utica, do you recall who he met with or who was there, who was surrounding him?
I know that there was local Democrat politicians that he had developed some kind of a relationship with, or whether or not they just briefed him before he came in and said, these are the guys that you need to endorse. I'm not entirely sure, but I do know that there were local guys that he met with, and he actually called them out by name in his address at the auditorium.
Where did the pictures come from?
The pictures came from Rome Historical Society. There was the alien photos a gentleman published in a book that has been distributed down in the valley. His name escapes me at this moment, but he provided us with some photos too, and public domain resources, places like that.
Yeah, I know you depend a lot on the historical societies, Rome, Oneida County.
Absolutely, yeah. They've always been a tremendous partner of ours. We love to promote them as well. They have an advertisement that we provide for them in the publication, and they provide us with photos and information. They've just been a great partner, and we love to help facilitate anything that they need as well.
Speaking of the Oneida County Historical Society, they did an exhibit on shoes, the shoe manufacturing industry in Utica way back when, and you did an article on that. When we come back, we'll talk about that, shoe manufacturing in Utica. Brad Velardi is our guest. We're talking about Greater Utica Magazine, distributed throughout the area, free. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Brad Velardi, Greater Utica Magazine, is our guest. We've been talking about articles, and we'll ask him what's upcoming in just a second in the magazine. Before we get on to the shoe manufacturing in Utica, Brad, they did I'm just leafing through the magazine. They did I don't remember it for some reason, a memorial service at the Utica Memorial Auditorium for Kennedy when he was assassinated.
Yes, yeah, and thousands of people showed up for that as well. And again, it's a testament to the respect that people had for the sitting president. It was probably surreal to a lot of people that just a few years before they were showing up to support the campaign, and before the end of his first term, he was killed.
Shoe manufacturing in Utica. I've seen the exhibit down at the Oneida County History Center, and when Patrick Reynolds, the curator who put that together, was talking to me about it, I kind of was a little surprised because I never considered Utica a shoe manufacturing center, but it was. Yeah,
and he did a brilliant job putting that display together. He's been a great asset, I think, for the History Center. He did one, recently on the Saturday Globe as well. That's very good. But yeah, I hadn't considered it either, and I think one of the big reasons for that is because it was really kind of a short-lived thing. It was really only maybe a 30-year span, perhaps a little bit less. Labor unions ultimately, according to the historic resources that I found, were the demise of it. But again, it's an instance in which I was able to kind of tie the national narrative to a local story, because it was the invention of a sole stitching machine in the early 1860s that led to the emergence of a lot of these shoe manufacturing firms. A gentleman in Massachusetts created the sole stitching machine, so you no longer needed to hand stitch soles onto shoes, and now mass production, the doors were open for mass production, and all of these different businessmen in Utica tried to take advantage of that opportunity.
In fact, one was herd shoes down by the train station.
Sure. Yep. Yep. Right down on Main Street. The only building, to my knowledge, that is still upright from that era. Many of them were actually located where the North Genesee Street Bridge now is, and they were demolished prior to that.
Mm-hmm. What are you working on upcoming? Anything? Got anything in mind?
Well, we have a couple of really exciting stories coming up. One that I'm currently working on right now is a young lady by the name of Libby Least. I'm not sure if you're familiar with her, but she is actually a very, very high-ranking person at NBC. In fact, I believe she's the vice president of the Today Show. Mm. So she's a very, very successful person from the local area that I had the privilege to interview. We're going to be doing a story on her. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jermaine Logan. If you ever heard of him, he's considered the king of the Underground Railroad. And he was a student at the Oneida Institute in Whitesboro, and he helped lead well over 1,000 fugitive slaves to their freedom during the era of abolition.
And Utica was a big stop on the Underground Railroad.
Absolutely, a huge stop. In fact, Utica was certainly on the right side of history when it comes to that issue. Garrett Smith is perhaps the greatest abolitionist in the history of our country, and the abolitionist, the museum is actually in Peterborough, which I believe is a town named after his father. Just an incredible history of abolitionist activity in Utica.
Somebody told me once, and when I don't have anything to do, one day I'll look into this, that there is a house still standing on, let me see, what would that be, John Street, leading into historic Rutger Park. The house is on John, maybe 3, 4, 5 houses down from Rutger Street. And I can picture the house in my mind. They say that was a stop on the Underground Railroad. I'd love to know if that was the case. Sure,
yeah. Another one of the stops was a gentleman by the name of William Blakey. I don't know if you ever heard of him, but he was a druggist in downtown Utica. And he actually, Ballantyne Bray, Bonnie Bray, that was all area that he once owned, and he named those streets, and he used to hide fugitive slaves, I believe, in the shed behind his house in South Utica. So there's a number of those stops in the area.
Is there a topic that you just keep I know when I was writing a daily column, I would put off things, say, I want to get to that, but it was too complex, or it was too required too much research, or I just couldn't get to it. You got something like that in the back of your mind?
Well, in previous appearances, I've mentioned General Electric is one that I really would like to get to. I think one that's a little more complex and photographs might be a little bit more challenging is the New Deal, the effect of the New Deal on the Mohawk Valley, because so many things that have just become a staple of the area, Proctor High School being one of them, have been the product of New Deal administrations. And so I would love to dive into that someday, again, when I have the time.
Yeah, you put it the right way, dive into it. You have to dive into some of these subjects. But with General Electric, that was modern enough that I'll bet you there's a bunch of pictures around, and there's
Oh,
still
sure.
a lot of memories that people have.
Absolutely, and that's the number one reason why I really would like to cover that, is because there's so many people that still have great memories of that company, and it provided great opportunities, and there's people that still have their pensions and, you know, and all that kind of thing, that it continues to supplement their income even to this day. So
I was talking to somebody the other day that worked up at French Road on, what did they call that, light military electronics or something like that. And not only did you have French Road, but you had 901 Broad Street, 837 Broad Street, Kent Street. And then you had the radio receiver end of it too.
right, yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a huge company, and it provide a lot of great opportunities for people, and that's essentially what people resonate with. You know, it helped them provide a living for their families, and so obviously holds a special place in their heart. And it put Utica on the map internationally. Yeah.
More transistor radios made in Utica, New York than anywhere else in the world at one point.
Incredible.
You know, until it all went to the east. And I remember, I wish I still had it, a little transistor radio. It wasn't that little, but there was a little handle on top, and you carried it around. Always good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, you too. Thanks a
Appreciate
lot.
it.
I appreciate it.
Greater Utica Magazine is available throughout the area. That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget CNYhomepage.com. There's a lot of good stuff there. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.